South Park's 27th season just dropped its third episode, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, but it seems as though the show has entirely lost its Tegridy. Farms. Tegridy Farms is gone. After a couple of episodes of more biting political commentary that made major waves, this week they probably made a smart call in crafting a more character-focused episode driven by Randy. Of course, it definitely still fit in plenty of that biting political and social commentary, and made sure to feature the new Saddam model of Trump once again. As usual, there is plenty to go over, so let's dive into South Park Season 27, Episode 3, Sycophancy. And hey, if you like this breakdown, I'm going to cover every episode this season, and I have a ton of other South Park videos across the channel, so consider subscribing. I am so glad the South Park streaming debacle is more or less over now, but you never really know when things might get messy again. That's why I use today's sponsor, ExpressVPN. If you don't know, ExpressVPN is a virtual private network, which is a tool that helps maintain your privacy online, protect your data, and unblock region-exclusive streaming content. So remember about a month ago when South Park's entire library disappeared from Paramount Plus internationally? Relax, guy! At the time, South Park was still on HBO Max in the United States, and ExpressVPN allows you to change your location so you can access all kinds of content from anywhere in the world. South Park's international audience could have just jumped onto the United States' HBO Max, keeping their binge uninterrupted. I wanted to watch Makoto Shinkai's masterpiece Your Name recently. It was on Netflix, just not in America, so I changed my location to Japan with ExpressVPN and was able to watch it without a problem. And now that Cartoon Network's legacy library is almost entirely removed from HBO Max in the United States, I've used my VPN to switch my location to different Latin American countries so I can watch classics like Ed, Edd and Eddy. And ExpressVPN has the fastest speeds of any VPN. So those jawbreakers, they're always looking smooth, crisp, and buffer-free. With companies sharing data willy-nilly and deleting media on a whim, privacy and accessibility are more important than ever. Find out how you can get 4 months free by scanning the QR code on screen, clicking the link in the description box below, or by going to expressvpn.com/Johnny2Cellos. Check out ExpressVPN today. Okay, so obviously with this week's episode seemingly ending the Tegridy Farms arc, the South Park headline is definitely going to make a bigger splash within the fandom than it is in the general public, unlike the previous 2 episodes. And with this only being the third of 10 episodes airing every other week this year, I think dialing things in to have a bit more focus on, well, South Park characters was a smart move. But I thought this one had a really strong balance too. It wasn't like it entirely lacked that political and social commentary. The beginning of this season seems to be taking on a bit of a serialized light quality, like we saw in seasons 18 or 21, sort of bridging some of the things that were featured across many episodes, but not directly leading each episode into the next one. Since the last episode had a major focus on ice, this one started with Randy's Tegridy Farm workers all being hauled away by ice. And this all feels like a very Randy dilemma. Obviously, this guy isn't up in arms about ice for any empathetic human rights reasons. He's just mad because they're taking his Mexicans.
Stupid ice! They took my Mexicans again!
But even at the very top of this episode, they start to tease the potential end of Tegridy Farms. I mean, tell me where I've heard that before. I thought they were faking us out for sure. But as usual, Randy is sort of the Matt and Trey surrogate in the conversation, while the rest of the Marshes take on the role of much of the audience. I love when Sharon tells Randy that this was his dream and never theirs.
You guys never told me that.
Yes, we did.
I'm sorry, but I still think it's funny that South Park fans have complained about Tegridy Farms for like 7 years, and the show has mostly just mocked them. Let's put a pin in this, because obviously it's a big part of the end of the episode, so we'll talk a lot more about it later. Side note, did y'all notice that this puzzle Stan and Shelly are doing is Casa Bonita? It's not exactly the same, but they actually do have a super similar puzzle available at Casa Bonita's store. This episode was basically centered around Randy desperately trying to pivot Tegridy's business plan to prevent him from having to give up the farm, utilizing ChatGPT to guide him every step of the way, and bringing Towley along for the ride. I genuinely loved the tech pivot, renaming it to Tegridy and lambasting the fact that nobody understands a single thing modern tech startups even do anymore.
By harnessing AI, we've transformed from a quaint farm into a platform for innovation.
And in a bit of a jab at Elon Musk, Randy and Towley's tech pivot also comes alongside a new ketamine habit. Not only did I find this pretty funny, but this was our first example of Matt and Trey repurposing a premise from that season 27 trailer that was full of fake clips that they released back in April. Obviously delivered very differently, but it definitely showcases that the stuff they came up with earlier in the year isn't entirely off the table. So I feel like a Diddy episode is pretty likely at some point, but more importantly, maybe we'll get that Butters air traffic controller episode. I think this episode's biggest strength is the way it tied its social and political commentary together thematically. The bulk of this episode is centered on Randy overly relying on ChatGPT, something they seeded in the first episode of the season. Obviously, they had a big ChatGPT episode in season 26, which was over 2 years ago at this point, but AI's use and the way people rely on it for so much has truly grown exponentially since then. Hey, I mean, some people can't even write their South Park videos without it, and this episode is entirely driven by Randy utilizing ChatGPT to do just about everything for him. First, he tries to use it as a marriage counselor for him and Sharon, then it gives him a whole new business plan to save Tegridy Farms. Hell, it even breaks into an ICE detention center for him. But the social commentary here is clear and twofold. One, people are just absolutely overly reliant on this technology to an alarming degree. For some people, every single decision is run through AI, basically eliminating any need for problem solving or critical thinking. It's a big yikes. And two, the way ChatGPT is programmed, it's just sucking up to the user and telling them what they want to hear. Hence the title's play on words, sicko fancy.
Hey, so what's a sycophant?
This actually comes on the heels of the most recent ChatGPT release, GPT-5, that actually dialed back its more friendly demeanor. And would you believe it if I told you that people didn't actually like that? They want their computers telling them they're special little guys. And so, of course, all of Randy's terrible ideas are continually enabled by ChatGPT. And I thought it was pretty smart commentary to liken this to a classic sycophant, before a nice hard cut to all of the corporate suck-ups bringing Trump Hussein gifts to curry his favor. And obviously this idea didn't come from nowhere. Just 2 weeks ago, Tim Cook gifted Trump a 24-karat gold bar, and earlier this year there was a lot of discourse about the $400 million Boeing 747 Trump accepted as a gift from Qatar Airlines. Both gifts were referenced here in the episode. I also appreciated that we got a couple cameos from some of the billionaires the show has lambasted in the past, including Zuckerberg and the massive-brained Bezos from season 22, who is of course designed after the aliens from the original Star Trek pilot The Cage. But yeah, this was just a really tightly written episode on a thematic level, and the way it tied these two sides of the story together narratively was all through Towley. Basically, Randy sends Towley to DC so he can also curry favor from Trump Hussein, basically attempting to lower weed's drug classification federally. And this entire sequence is just Mr. Towley Goes to Washington. It's pretty great. They just do a full-on homage to the 1939 classic Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, recreating the montage as Jimmy Stewart arrives in DC. They use the same music and parody many of the biggest beats of the montage, with a few key differences. For one, Towley's version is just caked with military presence due to Trump's recent takeover, bringing in tons of National Guard to our nation's capital. They pretty faithfully recreate the moments at the Jefferson statue and the Lincoln Memorial, though this time their faces have all been fully Trumpified, and both are once again showcasing what little he's packing. Pretty funny how persistent they are in showcasing this every episode this season. That's that good old Matt and Trey stubbornness I like to see. I don't know, I thought it was kind of funny to see people concerned that this was going to be a Towley episode, but I really think Vernon Chapman's performance as Towley is always so funny. And he had some absolutely killer line deliveries in this one.
Wow, this is gonna be so easy.
I genuinely just loved seeing Towley jaunt through occupied DC, wowed by everything he sees. And Mr. Towley Goes to Washington wasn't even the only fun movie homage we got here. Towley's actual meeting with Trump went full Return of the Jedi, with Randy in the Luke Skywalker role. Honestly, it's pretty funny that even in their relatively subdued Star Wars homage here, they liken Trump to a monstrous slave-owning mafia slug. They even make him do the Jabba laugh. They're really committed to just directly comparing Trump to any unflattering thing they can think of this year. And if you've seen Return of the Jedi, I'm sure you knew where this was going. Randy gifts Towley to Trump. It's clear that with the reaction the show has gotten from the White House and those that they've been lambasting in the current administration, South Park wants to keep prodding. And this week, I think they did a good job naturally tying this into the story at hand, whereas last week I felt like it maybe was a tad more forced. And they also seem to be doing something interesting with this storyline that feels like it's leading somewhere, at least with these last 2 episodes. I talked a lot in my last episode breakdown about how strange and abrupt that ending felt, and this week's didn't feel as abrupt, but it did feel just as ominous. Earlier in the episode, it seeds that Satan is pretty desperate to get out of this relationship and escape the White House, but it ends with him telling the newly enslaved Towley that isn't going to happen for either of them. And this also makes me wonder about last week's ending as well. Obviously, we saw Mackie and Clyde make it to the plane, but we never actually saw them escape Mar-a-Lago. I'm now thinking this might have been intentional. Are all of these characters being imprisoned or trapped in one way or another, and will this come into play later in the season? Again, it definitely feels like these aspects are leading somewhere. Okay, let's talk about the real ending though. The ending that fans have seemingly been waiting for years. The way Randy's story wraps up here is facilitated through Sharon, which I really loved to see. Obviously, she gets the absolute brunt of Randy's foolish Tegridy Farms behavior, and after she realizes that ChatGPT is just enabling his terrible ideas, she co-opts ChatGPT's vocal style and demeanor to get Randy out of his combination anxiety spiral K-hole.
We have to sell the farm now just to be able to eat.
No problem. Would you like me to start laying out some exit strategies for you?
But it really does seem like this is it. The end of Tegridy Farms. After teasing and mocking the end of it so many times before, the Marshes have actually packed it up and sold the farm. It's truly the end of an era, and honestly, though I know so many fans are stoked about this, I'm kinda sad to see it go. Tegridy Farms officially lasted from October 17th, 2018 to August 20th, 2025. Nearly 7 years for 32 standard episodes and 9 specials. I definitely understand that Tegridy is sort of a monument to Randy trending towards main character status, and I think that is a valid complaint. But I think the complaints that the stories were one note or repetitive were a little overblown and kind of surface level. Over this era, the show had a major variety of stories facilitated through Tegridy Farms, and I found a lot of them to be really fun and inspired. I feel like now that it's over, it will probably be looked back on a bit more fondly as time goes on. I think I'm going to do a bit of a retrospective on the era within the next month or so look out for that. But even as an honest fan of Tegridy Farms, I do think it's fair to say that it had run its course. And I think it's particularly hard to argue with how and why they've stamped this moment in time as the end.
Right now, there's just no place for Tegridy.
Too true, Randy. But the Marshes' move back to South Park does leave a lot of questions. Can Randy just go back to work as a geologist, or will he have to find a new job? And will that be part of the story for the rest of the season? It seems as though they're just going to move back into their old house, but what about Tolkien's family? They still live on Credigree Farms right across the street from Tegridy. Are they going to write them back into the main part of town, or are they just going to stay at Credigree, maintaining that connection to Tegridy Farms? It also makes me wonder how many of the other series developments they might decide to start walking back. They already found a way to keep Garrison in town instead of moving him to the White House. PC Principal has transitioned to Power Christian mode, but will they still keep him on the roster? Will Principal Victoria make a return? Honestly, PC Principal is way funnier. I hope he sticks around. And while I love Randy, I do hope the retreat from Tegridy means a return to some stories focused on the 4 boys. Honestly, the best way for them to open the 4th episode of the season would be a classic boys at the bus stop shot. I feel like we haven't gotten a good Kenny episode since like The Scoots, which was actually just 1 episode after the very first Tegridy Farms episode. Let's get some Kenny episodes in here. Regardless, with where this season has gone through its first 3 episodes, I genuinely just have no idea what to expect for episode 4, and that is pretty exciting. Obviously, I expect some Trump Hussein stuff again, but generally the direction of these episodes has, to some degree, surprised me every time. We of course have another 2-week wait till the next episode, so season 27 episode 4 will release on September 4th. Keep an eye out for that. But I want to know what you think about not just this episode, but the entire Tegridy Farms era. How do you feel now that it's finally over? And make sure to stay tuned. I'll be covering the new season every step of the way. Oh God, I'm in a hole. I'm in a hole.
Johnny
Two cellos.
I stay mellow watching Johnny Two Cellos. He talks cartoons, he's a really cool fellow. He keeps you posted on adult cartoons. If that's what you're into, then grab a spoon and a very big bowl of your favorite cereal. Feels like Saturday morning cartoon material. Johnny Two Cellos, watch him on YouTube. Now enjoy this groove and bust a move.